Well, no, it's really straightforward. You just look at the agenda and say we're starting the meeting. There's a bunch of stuff you're supposed to read that makes no sense to me because
Okay.
it's a little late in the game at this point.
All right.
Then you say who is in attendance, and then you declare the meeting started.
All right. So this is the City of Norwalk Zoning Board of Appeals for Thursday, January 18th, 2024. We're going to call this meeting to order. Members of the public can follow along this meeting by telephone, Zoom, and or the City of Norwalk's YouTube channel. Specific instructions and links can be found at https://www.norwalkt.org/1913/meeting-notices.
Hey, Lee, Danielle is getting some practice.
Good. I apologize to everyone. Totally spaced out on it.
So we just began, and she just signed us in, and she was going to say who is in attendance.
Yep, we're ready for roll call. So, let's
Proceed.
We got Lee Levy, Andy Conroy, Steve Ferguson. Who else is on here?
Ben Harpenter, Tom
Ben
Farkas.
Hampeter and Tom Farkas. That's
Right.
it, right?
That's right.
All right.
Very good. Very good. Again, apologies. Did you do all the particulars?
I did all the WWWs. Yeah.
Okay, fine.
We're at the
Very
point
good.
where
Then
we
we
need to do it.
shall.
Lee, we need to make a change in the order. You probably read the note.
I
We
didn't.
have somebody that wants to push it off to the next month.
Okay, and who would that be?
Tammy, it was Westmere again?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Very good. So we will eliminate item B. Do we want to, I think we have to open it and close it again.
Well, it is open.
It
We
is
haven't
open.
closed it. So
Okay.
you can just move it forward. I think that's probably within your province as chairman.
Yes, it will be. Okay, we will start with item A, application 23-1116-01.
Lee, I'm sorry.
Danielle?
I don't mean to interrupt. I mean, I'm sorry. I apologize for interrupting. I just want to make it clear because we have many attendees. The item 23 Westmere that I believe many of you are here for is going to be continued to the February 15th meeting per the applicant's request.
Okay. Thank you, Tammy.
So Danielle, if you would proceed.
Sure. So we'll start with 11 Mountain, which is 23-1116-01. AG Real Estate LLC, variances for residential density, 1,650 square foot lot per dwelling unit required, 1,159 square foot lot area per dwelling unit proposed. Section 118-510C, parking, 12 spaces required, 9 spaces proposed. Section 118-1220C, parking in the front setback, 35 feet from the center line of Cliff Street required, 5 feet proposed. Section 118-1220J, setback of parking / driveways from a budding residential zone, 20 feet required, 10 foot, 8 feet existing / proposed. Section 118-510D1, and parking backup, 24 feet required, 21 feet proposed. Section 118-1230D1 for an existing 9-unit multifamily residence in neighborhood business zone. Property located at 11 Boughton Street, District 2, Block 70, Lot 18. Request: the applicant seeks variances to allow a total of 9 residential units, 5 in the front building, 4 in the rear building, to remain on site. Zoning records indicate that there should be a total of 7 units, 5 in the front building and 2 in the rear building. Background. A zoning verification letter was issued to the current owner or owner's representative, Zachary Taylor, in April 2023. The attached zoning letter addressed to him notes the additional 2 units in the rear as illegal. Analysis and findings. Statute does not grandfather in number of dwelling units. At some point in time, 2 additional dwelling units were created in the rear building without permits. While those units may provide affordable rent and the current owner did not construct these units, the creation of those extra units are a self-created hardship in this case. The parcel simply does not meet the size requirements required to support 9 dwelling units and the parking requirements. Attachment 1 zoning verification letter dated April 13th, 2023.
Very good. Will the representative for this item please step forward, identify yourself, and proceed?
Mr. Chairman, thank you, Liz Suchy, for the applicant and owner. And the applicant and the owner is present tonight. It's AG Real Estate 1 LLC. Zach Silver is present. He is a principal of that entity. And also present tonight is Vincent Hines of Redness and Mead, who had prepared the draft site plan should this board deem it appropriate to grant the variances that we're requesting. A couple of things that I just want to go over. One was I want to thank the board for their indulgence both in November and December for continuing this matter. Both of those requests were because of me. One was there was an error in notice to neighbors for the first one, so you kindly moved the matter over to December. And then I was the lucky recipient of that awful stomach bug that was floating around just before Christmas. And that's why I was not able to present on December 21st. So thank you for that. The application was filed with the City of Norwalk on or about September 27th. Neighbors were notified of the November and December hearings by certified mail return receipt requested, and we returned the documents to staff, and that should be in the permanent file. Vince, if you wouldn't mind, could you screen share the existing conditions survey? I would appreciate it. As indicated in Ms. Maldonado's memo, 11 Boughton Street is District 2, Block 70, Lot 18. The lot is 10,431 square feet. It is in the neighborhood business zone. It's improved with 2 legally non-conforming structures. But one was constructed where there is 5 families with a certificate of occupancy. That was constructed around 1870. And then there is a 2,500 square foot building that was constructed pre-zoning before 1929. And that is the building where there is a question about where the units are, how they became, and the variances that are necessary in order to legalize the additional 2 units in that structure. At some point in time after 1972, 4 units started to appear on the tax records, and they have continued to appear since that time. So clearly those 4 units, the 2 additional units, have existed in that for nearly 50 years. They were not created by my client. They weren't even created by the predecessor, but they've existed without zoning violations for all that time. And I think that's important because more often than not, this board hears applications from property owners that create units and then, however, are found to be violative of the zoning regulations and come to you on bended knee asking for forgiveness rather than for permission. My client purchased this property in the spring. At that time, he was made aware that there were 2 additional units that did not appear to have permits from the zoning department. So he's coming before you proactively to try to get this squared away. And the reason why it's as important as it is not only is this, of course, rental income for him, but there are 2 units there that provide affordable housing for members of this neighborhood who have lived in this building for many, many years. As I said, the 9 apartments have existed for quite some time. He did not create the additional units. It's been inspected by the health department, and there have been violations over the times from the late 80s to early 2000s, which have been rectified by the prior owners. The fire department has inspected the site, so there have been attention paid to health and safety concerns that the city might have. Again, those do not carry weight with this board other than to give you an indication that these units have existed and various other agencies have have reviewed the dwellings and made prior owners undertake some repairs or upgrades to make sure that they were safe. It is an oddly shaped lot, and that is something that can come into play when you're considering whether or not requests are valid. It is a corner lot, so it has a setback off Cliff Street, another setback off Fountain Street. The other interesting thing about this property is it's bounded on the north, as you'll see on this plan, by the Zone C, or the C zone. That requires an expanded setback from that zone line 20 feet into the property. So that's another challenge that's created. Today, there's parking on the site that goes almost up to that concrete wall, so it doesn't abide by the 20-foot setback line. There is the gravel parking area. It exists throughout. There's been parking in the front setback for many, many years. So many of the variances requested relate to conditions that exist and not conditions that we are creating. Vince, if you wouldn't mind, could you move to the site plan? So what we're proposing to do, if you grant the variances requested, in the back, the setback will be improved to that rear property line, where instead of parking being directly adjacent to that stockade fence and concrete wall, the setback will be between 10 and 15 feet, even though we can't reach the 20 feet. It's a pretty good setback. And important, and interestingly enough, the neighbor who lives in that two-story dwelling in that C resident zone adjacent to this parcel has submitted a letter of support for this proposal. The lot conforms to the neighborhood business zone, lot area, width, and setbacks. The buildings comply for maximum height and number of stories. The structures do provide much needed affordable housing units. And all we can say is we just hope that you deem it appropriate to grant the relief sought. We're revising the site to create as many legal parking spaces, meeting the 8.5 by 19 foot dimension as we can. As you can see there, we just can't get in a 24 foot backup aisle space behind some of these parking spaces. That's why there's a request for a backup aisle dimension. As part of this plan, if the variances are granted, we plan to eliminate a curb cut that's closest to the intersection of Cliff and Fountain Street, which will improve safety and improve the sight lines coming out of the site on the other access way that will remain. And then some additional landscaping will be installed, green space will be installed, some of the gravel parking area will be removed. So the site will be improved to a great degree from what exists today. It's almost all asphalt or structure. There's very little landscaping. There's very little green space. So my client is certainly more than willing to do that and install whatever else you deem appropriate if you deem the variances should be granted. At this point, I really don't have anything else to share with you, just hoping that you will see that it wasn't self-created by this applicant. It was created over time by other predecessors, and it's existed. I would suspect that had Mr. Silver not purchased the property, it would have continued as a 9-unit dwelling, 9-unit residence, and there wouldn't have been any issues except and until someone either went to the zoning department to seek permits or some other issue arose, whether it be a complaint or other investigations by other departments. I really have nothing else to add to that. We welcome any questions you might have. The only one other thing I would like to just mention is Mr. Silver did approach all of the neighbors who surround this property and explain to them the conditions that exist, what he would like to achieve. And he has received letters of support from 5 neighbors, and I believe all of those have been made part of the file. If you have any questions of me, I'd be happy to answer them. Mr. Silver is available, as is Mr. Hines, and we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Ms. Sachi, I think my first question, I mean, I've done a fair amount of consulting work with individuals and real estate groups that have purchased buildings, and my experience has been that before you make the final purchase, you do a fairly extensive search so that you know what you're buying. That didn't seem to happen in this case.
No, Chairman Levy, if I may, excuse me for interrupting you. No, Mr. Silver did investigate and did do a municipal search, and it was part of that revealed that there was an issue with the additional 2 units in that one structure.
Okay, now that's good to know.
He did. The idea is he would like to get this all legalized rather than have to take tenants and relocate tenants, move them from their neighborhood. He would just prefer that it would be.
That's understandable, and you know, I think we're all very aware of the need for affordable housing in Norwalk. And you know, that's something I'm sure that when we deliberate, we'll be taking into account.
If I made it appear that this was, he didn't know until later, no, he investigated and.
Okay, well, that's good to know, and it might have been helpful to know that, you know, going into this. One of the things I see not on the site plan is a recreational area. And that is something we have talked about extensively on other projects similar to this. Is there an area that we can have designated as a recreational area, which is required of all multifamily housing?
If that is something this board deems appropriate, we will certainly work with staff and come up with an area that could be designated as recreation. I would suspect there's that area in the back between the Zone C and Neighborhood B line, which is now going to not have any parking. That could be a recreation area. It could be green space with tables, chairs, or similar accessories that you will often find in a recreation area.
You know, that's a good question. You mentioned that, Lee. I don't mean to interrupt, but
No, go ahead.
there is a recreational area a block from there. There's a park down there.
Across the street. Yep.
Yeah, there's a park right down the street on Boughton, on the opposite side. When you pass 28 to the right, there's a park there, about a block and a half up. To have a recreational area, I'm not really fully for the recreational area, only because people will loiter and hang out in that little corner. I know you come on Cliff Street, it's a sharp left to that parking lot. I don't know if recreational area would be strongly advised for that little piece back there behind the house where people could congregate.
So I don't mean to interrupt, but rec area is proposed on the zoning location survey.
It's shown on it.
Yeah, I mean, it is indicated by that hatch, but there's nothing like really designating it. It's just like taking up the interstitial space, right? I mean, there doesn't seem to be a difference in material, paving, or anything. Or is there, I guess, is the question on this site plan.
It does not appear to that extent, but you can certainly make that a condition of approval that it be improved with tables, chairs, things that you would typically see in a recreation area, and we're happy to do that.
Yeah, I don't think we're asking for swing sets and slides. I'd also like to see an indication that the extensive paving and gravel be removed and a landscape plan presented to the zoning staff.
Perfectly fine. We're happy to do so.
And Lee, to piggyback that thought, Lee, that was totally aligned with my thought, is having greenery there. Based on their communications, Liz, to the neighbors, was 9 Boughton Street communicated to? Was there any, are they for this, against this? Do they have any major concerns? The neighboring?
Let me see. Hold on just a minute. I had a list of all.
There's nothing about recreation or anything in those letters.
No.
And most of the letters that I'm looking at, it's basically a form letter that got passed around and signed. I'm a little dubious of those, but I accept it.
I want to say that, Liz, because for the multiple years, for about 25 years, I was saying that corridor, because I had a business right down the street, about a block and a half from there myself for a few years. There's some owners that have been there for years. So I'm just curious to know like what their thoughts were, because there's been a lot of absentee landlords in that corridor right there. And that's been the major concern with that little corridor. You have 3 owners there that they're never there. And that's what made Cliff Street the way it is from the top of the hill going down to Boughton. So I'm just concerned with the owners that live on site next door and adjacent to that property, what their thoughts were.
Well, certainly Mr. Mastriani, whose property is to the left going up Cliff Street, he was, Mr. Silver spoke to all the neighbors personally.
Could I interject for one moment? My apologies. Hi, Zachary Silver here. Thank you guys all so much for hearing us today. I did speak to all the neighbors, as Mr. Levy pointed out. For the convenience of the neighbors, we drafted a form letter just so I could go and talk to them and explain everything, and instead of asking them to write a letter themselves, just get their signature to be able to show you guys the support. So that's what happened with the letters. I spoke to Mrs. Smith's son,
Steve?
I'm sorry,
Steve?
Selwyn, I believe his name is.
Okay.
And I spoke to him on 2 or 3 occasions, got his signature. He didn't have any issues. The owner of 7 Paradiso I spoke to, Mr. Mastriani I spoke to, and they were all very receptive to what I'm trying to do. So that was my experience with the neighbors. In terms of recreation area and landscaping and more parking spaces or less parking spaces, to be very candid, any conditions the board is interested in imposing, if you would be so gracious to legalize the additional 2 units, I'll do.
And Mr.
But one
Levy,
of the other
excuse me,
things that I was going to suggest we require is floor plans of that 2-story dwelling that showed the layout to both the building and fire department of the apartments, because obviously there's none on record.
That would be absolutely no issue from my end. I know that that building has passed fire inspection, I think as recently as 6 months ago. But if floor plans of that building is something that you deem necessary, I'd be more than happy to provide it.
and Mr. Levy, just 2 things, just going back to your question about a landscaping plan. There are some other areas on the site, for example, to the left of the driveway that we're proposing, where some right down at the left corner.
Yes.
Well, there could be landscaping installed there. There are other areas that we could certainly provide a plan to staff, work with staff, and come up with an acceptable plan. And as far as floor plans, I'm confident that Mr. Silver would like to have not only the zoning department issue a zoning permit, but get whatever building permit inspections are necessary so he can get a CO for that structure with 4 units. So floor plans will be required,
Very good.
and all the inspections necessary by the health department and by the fire department, because it's more than a single family residence.
Correct.
I also found a lot of water collecting down inside that parking lot. Have you found the same thing? Has there been a water drainage study there, Liz?
I'm not aware of that, but folks at Redness and Mead, I'm sure when they take a closer look, and if we come up with a landscape plan, we can certainly look at that and make sure that there isn't an issue.
Yeah, I think some greening would definitely help that that burden in that on that part of that street.
And if you see fit that when the parking lot gets paved, because right now it's just a gravel lot, so the plan would be to pave and stripe the actual parking areas. If need be, I'm more than happy to put in some drainage.
Can I just bring up a point? I pass that intersection frequently. What's most annoying, or at least disconcerting, is that whoever is the cable provider or internet provider or electrical provider, it's a mess. If you look above that parking lot, that wall outward facing, sometimes people can hide that, but it's spaghetti all over the place with you just look at it, you'll know that you need to address that to make it look like it's not an illegal wire room.
It's a good point. Good point.
It really is. I'm surprised whoever has owned this has stood for that, or even neighbors, or even anybody who's concerned with any kind of electrical violation might say, you know what, I think we have too much strung on the side of this, this edifice.
Well, very good
Correct.
point.
No?
Let
Yes?
me ask a quick question. When I was looking at satellite view of this, and I looked at the year of the photo, it was 2023. There's an awful lot of equipment that is large in the parking lot. And the way it looks, some of the equipment would take 3 spaces. So do you have a landscaper that is housed there and putting all this equipment in the parking lot?
That's another a very good point, Mr. Conroy. The prior owners had entered into some sort of lease agreement with the contractor and allowed the contractor to park in this parking lot. Mr. Silver has eliminated that relation, has terminated that relationship, and that contractor is no longer parking in this lot. First of all, there's no room for it. Second of all, that's not permitted to be done here, given
Yeah.
so
I
that's,
think having no room for it is particularly important.
Liz, when did that contract leave, Liz?
Mr. Silver, when did you get him off the site?
Oh, I made it a closing condition that the contractor had to be off the site.
So you closed in April, May?
I believe so.
Of this year?
Of
Yes.
2023.
Are you planning on making other improvements to the property if the variance is granted?
General maintenance, siding, making it look nicer.
Okay.
To Mr. Farkas's point, the electrical, all the internet and cable providers, they need to be spoken to, and all of that needs to be cleaned up.
Yeah, you should get Frontier as well. Whoever's on there, just tell them, this is unacceptable. This is it's a plague on your building.
But you're absolutely right.
Any other
Could
questions?
you tell me more
from-
about the recreation area? That's something we've stressed over and over again. So nobody should really come to us without having known that. Just having a grassy area probably doesn't cut it. You have anything else in mind?
Picnic tables, barbecue area. I'm not sure the insurance companies would like that so much.
In the right weather, it's not a bad idea. I know that you're worried about other people kind of camping out there. So you could do what I see other people do, which is have the barbecue unit removable. And you could bring it indoors. And there's a risk to having it removable because if it gets left outdoors, somebody else can move it and walk off. But something more than just grass. That doesn't make a recreation area.
Mr. Conroy.
Somebody will park on the grass eventually.
If this is acceptable to you, Mr. Conroy, I'll take a look at some of the other recreation area plans for different projects, share that with Mr. Silver, and between those ideas and whatever else staff may come up with, we'll make sure that a plan is devised so that it addresses your concerns and it isn't just grassy area, that it provides for recreation in a meaningful way.
Yeah, I
Well,
think
Liz, you know how important that is to us because somebody can't afford a lot of rent and they live in not upscale, but downscale. We don't want to put them in a position where they can't have a recreation area.
Understood. That's an excellent point. We would, as Mr. Silver said, we will make sure that a plan is devised that's satisfactory to staff and reasonable to him and addresses that concern. It's a very valid concern.
Good.
Any other questions from board members?
I would just also add that I assume the proposed recreation area shown on the site plan is the required square footage.
Yes.
I think that the requirement for recreational area and the definition also has some dimensional requirements. And so, just taking up the space between the buildings is, I don't think is sufficient to meet that requirement. So I think the future plan would, should kind of clear that up in the landscape plan.
In some yes, the definition of recreation area does have certain dimensional requirements, but it doesn't specify location other than it can't be in certain restricted areas. But
Right.
We'll make sure that the areas are functional rather than just throwaway.
Yeah,
areas
exactly.
that don't make sense. That's an excellent point as well.
Just to cover the old ground that I'm trying to hear Mr. Silver, and I only caught part of what he said. The equipment that was being parked in the parking lot, you asked that tenant to remove the equipment And he's still living there or she's still living there?
No, the equipment's no longer there. I believe, Liz, do you have any photos of the site right now?
I had shared with staff some photos, I think that I took in November. But to clarify, I don't believe that the equipment that was there was equipment from a tenant. I think it was a separate lease agreement between the owner of the property and a contractor.
That's correct. I'm sorry to not be direct, Mr. Conroy.
It
There
wasn't
was
a
a lease agreement between the previous owner and a gentleman that owned a landscaping company.
Okay, Liz, have you terminated the relationship?
The relationship
The
one hundred
lease.
percent
the lease.
terminated and has been terminated for 6-7 months.
Okay, why I brought it up is I didn't want that to be a future to-do.
It is
I
not a
wanted to
future.
know that it's done.
It is 100% done.
I would just add to that, I believe the deputy zoning inspector was out there several months ago and noted no issues with
Okay.
with contractors' equipment.
Nope.
Well, members of the board, if you have any other questions for me or Mr. Silver, Mr. Hines, we're happy to answer them. But we'll reserve some time at the end if necessary, and certainly if there's any comment from the public. But thank you for your time and your thoughtful questions and comments. And should you deem it appropriate to grant the variances, Mr. Silver and I will work closely with Ms. Maldonado to address all your concerns and make sure that the plan that needs to be provided is adequate.
Okay, Tammy, do we have anybody from the public that wishes to provide input?
So we have some attendees, so if you'd like to comment, you can use the raise your hand feature if you're attending via your computer. If you've dialed in, you need to press *9 on your phone to raise your hand and then *6 to unmute. There are no raised hands. Did we want to acknowledge the 5? We've spoken of the 5 support letters from the neighbors. Do we need to reference again who those came from?
I think we should. They're form letters, so I think we read one of them into the record. We can substantiate that by the name and signature that they're from different individuals.
Danielle, did you want to read one of them?
Yeah, you didn't resend them, right?
Not in today's email, no.
I can read one.
Thanks, Lee.
Okay. Dear Mr. Levy, I own property at 15 Bounton, Norwalk, Connecticut, which is next door / across the street to 11 Bounton Street. I've owned this property for 33 years. I am aware of the application for variances for 11 Bounton Street, Norwalk, filed by AG Real Estate LLC. Zach Silver of AG Real Estate explained the application to me, and I have no objection to his request for variances. There have been 9 apartments in these buildings for many years. The property has been neglected and not well maintained. Mr. Silver's plans to create paved parking, close off one curb cut, and beautify the property will be a great improvement to my neighborhood and continue to offer affordable apartments. I hope you will approve his request. Sincerely. And this letter, the first one is from Mario Mastriani. The second one is from Oliver Wright and Edna Wright. The third one is from Eleanor Smith. Next one is from Marie Richem. The next one is Joseph Mastriani. And that covers it.
Thank you, Mr. Levy.
This will be a nice little testament to this change in that corridor. Those who supported that, when their applications come forward, we'll be looking at those properties as well to see how they're conforming as well.
Yes, Steve, a very good point. Well, if there is Nothing else on this item. Item B 23-1221-03 will be continued to our February meeting. The next item is 24-0118-01, Joanne Smith.
All right. So 24-0118-01 Joanne Smith, variance for front setback, 13.5 feet proposed, 30 feet required, 6.2 feet to the existing front porch. Section 118-350C for a proposed one-story northerly addition and a two-story southerly addition and variance of parking within the front setback. Section 118-1220J at an existing single-family residence in C residence zone, property located at 281 East Avenue, District 3, Block 42, Lot 22. Request: the applicant seeks variance to add living space and attached garage with storage to an existing dwelling. Background: the single-family home was built in 1930. There are existing nonconformities with the location of the structure and exterior parking. There is an unpermitted lower level unit that will be removed with this proposal. Analysis and findings: the proposed additions to the home will be consistent with other newer homes along East Avenue. The home will remain out of the flood zone. Coastal site plan review and approval from the Planning and Zoning Commission will be required subsequent to any variances granted. Amelia Williams notes in her coastal review memo that the front setback variance would allow construction to be further from the tidal waters, but would prefer a decrease in impervious area. The board may consider conditioning any variance grant with prohibiting any future living space in the storage area proposed above the garage. Attachment 1, coastal site plan memo from Amelia Williams, land use planner. Shall I read the memo?
I think it's important enough.
Yeah. Upon review of our records and maps, it appears the property at 281 East Ave directly abuts coastal resources. The closest point of disturbance is the new deck, approximately 10 feet from the coastal jurisdiction line and 14 feet from the existing seawall. As the addition is more than 1,000 square feet and closer than 100 feet to the coastal resources, this project requires a full coastal site plan review and CAM application to the Planning and Zoning Commission per section 118-11110 of the City of Norwalk zoning regulations. Further information is required as part of the CAM application, which will help determine the anticipated adverse impacts on coastal resources and/or future water dependent opportunities. This will include an environmental report / CAM assessment, engineered site plan, drainage report, landscaping plan, and utility plan. Consistency with the goals and policies of the Coastal Area Management Act cannot be determined yet with the limited information required for this variance application. However, the proposed additions contribute to the amount of impervious area on the site. Minimal development near sensitive coastal resources is preferred. It is encouraged to reduce impervious surfaces and conduct construction-related activities as far from coastal resources as possible. It is a benefit to the application that no work is being proposed in the flood zone, although it is important to consider the potential impact of a rise in sea level, coastal flooding, and erosion patterns. This lot appears to be susceptible to erosion given the slope of the site. Through the preservation of coastal resources, though preservation of coastal resources is implied, enhancement of these resources would be consistent with section 22A-92 of the Connecticut General Statutes. The request of a variance of the front setback requirement helps construction to take place further from the tidal waters, but still increases impervious area. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. If you have any questions regarding the above, please call or email.
Very good. Will the representative for this item, please step forward, identify yourself.
So before the applicant begins their presentation, we have encountered a possible hiccup with the notice requirements. The applicant provided receipt of mailing at the end of the day, and there are 6 abutters listed. 4 of the abutters were noticed on January 8th, which would be in compliance with the 10-day prior to the meeting mailing requirement. However, 2 of the abutters were sent notice several days later, so not within the required timeline.
Well, that's not a good thing.
Hi there, my name is
Uh,
Nicholas. I'm here on behalf of Joanne. I appreciate all your time tonight. I'm here to discuss, we are seeking for your consideration.
Well, before you
Sure.
proceed,
Yeah,
we need to make some decision whether we're going to actually hear you this evening,
so
because the notice was not sent properly.
yes,
And as far as I'm concerned, this should be put off until next month.
so if I may, when are the legal notices expected to go out to the public? Are they expected the date like in mid-December? Because we received the legal notice January 5th. So that left 3 days for us to get it out. Because I guess a date was not confirmed for this meeting until then. It left 3 days. We got the notices out, but 2 of them we screwed up on, and you're 100% right. They should have been out. They should have been on time, and we sincerely apologize about that.
Well,
So
if
I would
we were to
interject-
hear you tonight and one of the neighbors that wasn't properly noticed could turn around and file suit. So
Yes.
my feeling, and I'll poll the board, is we should put you off till next month.
I agree
Board
with you.
members, Andy?
I agree with you.
You know, Nicholas, this is a good idea unless you have a time frame concern. I would take that recommendation.
Yep.
Just circle back around and then
Sure.
deeply inform staff or legal representation and come back again.
Absolutely. Yep. Thank you.
Okay, so we have officially opened item 24-0118-01. And we will move it off the agenda for tonight, and you will be heard at the February hearing. Please make sure that you notify the adjoining property owners of that.
Thank you very much for your time. We absolutely
You're
will.
welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving along, item D, 24-0118-02.
All right.
Danielle?
24-0118-02, Maria McKenna. Variance to allow parking within the front setback, section 118-1220J, at an existing duplex dwelling, proposed to be compliant 3-family dwelling in D residence zone. Property located at 4 Hillside Street, District 2, Block 49, Lot 15. Request. The applicant seeks variance to allow portions of 4 proposed parking spaces to encroach 4 feet or less relative to each parking space's proximity to the front setback line into the required 30 feet front setback. Background. The building was constructed in 1972 as a 2-family duplex home. It is currently in violation in the zoning citation hearing process due to the conversion to a 3 residential without permits. While 3 residential units are allowed as of right in the D residence zone, staff cannot issue an after the fact 3-family permit without the required parking. The current owner did not make the conversion, rather they bought the property in this condition. Analysis and findings. The property owner should have conducted due diligence to confirm this was a legally created 3-family home. It could be argued that this is a self-created hardship. However, the variance request for relief from parking within the setback is minimal. If the board grants the request, the applicant will then be able to obtain a zoning permit for 3 residential units, and this will cure the zoning violation.
Very good. Will the representative for this applicant please step forward?
Yes, good evening. For the record, Vince Hines with a licensed engineer with Rennis and Mead, having offices in Stamford and Wilton. Our office has provided engineering, surveying, and planning services for Miss Maria Marquina, the current owner of 4 Hillside. For the record, the application was submitted on November 22nd, 2023, and notice of the hearing was sent out January 5th via certified mail return receipt to the neighbors, and subsequently published in the Hour on the 6th and the 11th. Returned green cards were sent in to staff this afternoon. The site lies, actually, I'll share my screen here. The site lies within the D residence zone and is approximately just over 1/10 of an acre in size. Miss Marquina purchased this property in late 2022, where it was represented to her that the structure had a basement unit that was being utilized as a 3rd apartment unit, which has access through the side yard, a walkway through the side yard to the rear. She has since been issued a notice of violation, as in fact, the unit is not permitted, as you just heard, and the structure was only permitted as a 2-family home since being constructed in 1972. 3 dwelling units are allowed as of right in the D-res zone, but again requires that adequate parking. In this case, for 3 units, the parking is 1.3 spaces per unit, or 4 spaces when you round up, which is depicted here on the zoning location survey. Further, per the regulations, the parking stalls shall be set behind the front yard setback, which in this case is 30 feet for a 3-unit home. Based on the geometry of the lot, the location and construction of the existing dwelling with an entry stoop, the required parking, which are in this case are depicted as 9 by 19 foot spaces, are proposed to the front of the structure and extend into the setback by 1/10 of a foot at the furthest west location here, to about 4 feet at the east end of the parking row as you move across there. So that changes gradually from a 1/10 of a foot to 4 feet, which represents the variance requested here today. I think it's an important distinction that a 2-family home would also require 4 parking spaces. And in this case, a similar situation might arise that to get 4 legal spaces, you would have to provide this type of layout. So I say that because I imagine that the same extent into the front yard would exist in that condition. And then the only other thing I'd point out here is that in the gray, as I zoom in, you can see the existing outlines of the driveway, and we're beyond that into an existing lawn and walkway to that rear unit. So there's really space for 2 legal conforming spaces in the front yard. Again, extending into that setback. With that, I would ask for your approval, but I'm happy to answer any questions beforehand. And then, if granted, Ms. Marquina would move forward to obtain the necessary zoning permits to legitimize the 3rd unit.
My first question, how wide is the driveway where it meets Hillside Street?
It's about 24 feet, give or take.
By looking at this, I would say it's closer to 27 feet. Approximately the width of 3 of your parking spaces.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay, is there any way we can minimize the width of that curb cut to begin to provide more open space area for landscaping?
I think certainly, think by cutting down that curb cut, minimizing it, I'd probably start by shifting west versus east, just to get us away from the corner of Hillside Street here. I think we could certainly do that and still have the required backup kind of aisle space behind the parking space for maneuverability. And I think what that would do is open up a sliver of green between the public walkway and that parking.
I also see no indication of any new landscaping. Is that something you'd be willing to have your client provide?
So, yeah, we certainly have an existing tree, a few trees here on the property. I think just because of the topography challenges here, Hillside Street does go low to high as you come across the site east to west. So we would need to install a wall along the east side of this small wall, along the east side of this new parking, which might have an impact on the one existing tree. So our recommendation for presentation to zoning staff, if the variance would be granted, would be yes, to incorporate additional landscaping measures here at between the parking and the property.
Okay. Any other question?
Yeah, can you talk about drainage since you're increasing the impervious surface area?
Yeah, so I'll shift to this plane actually. So as part of this expansion of the asphalt, we did take a look at that, and so we're capturing slightly larger area than what the new area represents, just based on tributary area. So we're introducing a new area drain structure and a small 2x2 Caltech system, which based on the increase meets the requirements of the DPW drainage manual for peak rate and water quality treatment.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I have a question. How many?
I didn't follow that. Have we increased the amount of foliage that we're adding, and are we decreasing the curb cut? Because you're right next to the school, Benjamin Franklin. So next to it, you're almost part of it. So do people come up and drive up and see that parking area and say, oh, I can park here?
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, I think the ultimate, I agreed with Commissioner, with Chairman Levy about, I think we certainly can cut back the drive entrance to make it more residential in nature and meet the minimum requirements for, I think I think for that it's 12 feet.
Some small amount of planting will distinguish it as a residence rather than open parking for Benjamin Franklin School.
Yeah, I completely agree.
I have a question. How many units are in this structure? Because I see the on the street, it says 1, 2, 3, 4 on the facade. Is that still correct?
So based on what we've been indicated to by staff, there are 2 legal units. But there's a 3rd unit in the basement of the structure.
Which is not legal.
Correct, which is why we were required to come for the parking requirement.
So it says 1, 2, 3, 4 on the building. What, so they're just 1 and 2, 3 and 4 are not addresses there?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the addresses, but I
Well,
know.
you look, I'm just looking at the front, I roll past and you see 4. It's a shame to me that the structure has such nice curb appeal. It's a shame you have to obliterate it, but in any event, it just caught my eye that the basement certainly not warranted, but it does have 1, 2, 3, 4 on the front of the building. So I'm thinking to myself, people getting mail delivered to a non-existing habitat?
Tom, sometimes
at the
there's an owner's mailbox, so there may be an owner's mailbox and then one for units 1, 2, and the illegal 3.
Yeah, so I just brought this up. I don't know if you're still seeing my screen.
No,
I believe the indication here is that the 1, the 2, and I don't happen to see a 3 here, but I think those are the specific units within the building, and 4 is just the physical street address. So the 1, 2, and 3 are representing the.
Oh, the
the
indication,
physical
I see,
units.
okay, so the 4 is the umbrella one. Okay, I got you.
Correct.
has the basement unit been inspected by the building department and fire department?
I don't have that answer. I don't think it has. But
Okay.
certainly as a point of legitimizing the unit, that would be part of the zoning permit and building permit.
Okay, my concern with basement apartments is the second means of egress. So we will discuss making that a requirement of our approval.
Pursuit.
Yeah, it looks to me like the grading of the site means that kind of at the back side and the side facing the school is actually all open. But you're right, Lee, we haven't seen any plans to understand what that basement apartment is.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, certainly this walkway on the east side of the building, it leads to the basement unit, and it is all at grade to the rear here.
What is the asphalt area to the south of the building?
Yeah, I believe they've actually installed a turf material over top of this. It is currently being used as a recreation space.
Back to the old recreational space. Okay. I don't have any further questions. Do we have any other board members that do?
Yeah, I think there's somewhat of a challenge if I'm facing the property now to the right of it, this little slope there where the tree is at. You know, it'd be nice if because there's some other alternatives to how you could line up those 4 cars, but I guess that's the only way, because I know you looked at this, Vincent, this is like the only approach you have is line them up straight up coming into the property, right? That's the only thing you saw out of your bag of options.
Yeah, I would say it's a good question, and we looked at it a couple of different ways. The only other option that had any kind of merit really was having the 4 spaces turned perpendicular to what they are depicted here, but that would require further variance because we'd have to stack them kind of in this direction, right? So we'd basically be using the whole front yard for the physical parking space.
And it'll be kind of lined up with the parking lot with Ben Franklin.
Yeah, right.
The parking situation there.
And you'd end up with a situation where you still physically need the same amount of pavement because you still have the backup space requirement also.
It makes sense. Makes sense. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. If there's no more questions, I'll stop sharing my screen and thank you for your time ahead of hearing a response.
Sammy, do we have any
We
outside
didn't,
questions?
we didn't receive any written comments. We've got a few attendees still remaining. And if they'd like to comment on this item, just please raise your hand. If you've called in, you'll dial star, star 9 to raise your hand if you called in, and star 6 to unmute. No raised hands.
Okay, I don't have anything further. Any other board members? Okay, I guess we'll close this item and move on to item 24-0118-03. Kelly Wood and Caitlin Hannum.
All right.
Will the representative please come? No,
Well, I
sorry,
gotta read it.
Danielle, please read the application.
24-0188 118-03 Kelly Wood and Caitlin Hannum. Variance for front yard setback 26.2 feet proposed, 30 feet required. Section 118-340C for proposed front porch at existing single family dwelling in B residence zone. Property located at 8 Acorn Lane, District 5, Block 80, Lot 92. Request: the applicant seeks relief to allow a proposed front porch to encroach several feet into the front setback. Background: this is an existing single-family home built in 1955. The homeowner seeks to expand and improve the home. The proposal includes a 12-foot wide by 5-foot deep front porch. Section 118-900C allows a roofed over but unenclosed portico built from a conforming wall with the dimensions of 8 feet wide by 6 feet deep to be built within the front setback. The homeowner wishes to have additional porch space beyond this regulatory allowance. Analysis and findings. This is a corner lot fronting on 3 streets. While corner lots are fairly common, it is certainly more unusual for a corner lot to have 3 fronts versus 2 fronts. Staff does not pose that this alone constitutes a zoning hardship. However, the strictest adherence to meeting all required setbacks is somewhat of a practical difficulty. If the board grants this request, it may consider conditioning approval with the prohibition of any future enclosures of the front porch.
Okay, will the representative for this application please step forward?
Hi, my name is Kelly Wood, resident of 8 Acorn Lane, an applicant here. As stated, we are proposing to a variance for the front porch to be 12 foot by 5 foot deep and encroach on that front setback a little bit. And we seek a little flexibility to allow that, as we have, a unique property here with 3 front setbacks. It really restricts where we can build. Unrelated to this variance, we are putting on an addition on the home to help improve the neighborhood and our home. We'd really love to stay here, and adding on this front porch at this size will really be proportionate to that addition. Knowing that an allowable front porch per section 118-900C at 8 foot wide and 6 foot deep exists, we hope that this adjustment, coming into 5 feet from 6 and going a little wider will be permissible.
Do you have any plans and elevations to show us?
I do. All right. The front porch, new front porch will be here as proposed, and 26.2 from that front setback.
You have any elevations of what this is going to look like?
Ooh, I do. I can quickly get that to my computer for you. I apologize. I didn't have that handy.
Kelly, let me know if you need help. I can access it as well.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that would be great if you have that handy.
Okay, just give me just a moment.
Stop sharing really quick. Well, actually, I have that right here. Beat you to it, Tammy. Don't mind, the front walkway is not what it will look like. We will not have a massive driveway looking front walkway. I apologize for that. But this is the gist of what that front porch will look like and what the addition will look like for that primary suite on that side, the side setback.
Okay.
So we are, there will be no walls, the 2 columns to support that front roof overhang are all that will exist along the front there.
One of the comments from staff is to prohibit any enclosure of the front porch in the future. Any issue with that?
No, none at all. I don't think the layout will be, it wouldn't make sense. It would inhibit its use even further. You know, our intention is to sit out front and see our neighbors. It's a very social neighborhood. And this will get us out there. Currently our exposure to our neighborhood is by walking around. To be able to sit out front is something that we've always wanted.
Tammy, have all the green cards been collected on this? Just to ask?
Yes, they are in the
Okay.
computer.
Okay. I really have no questions at this point.
Great.
Any board members with questions?
Just one. I like the looks of it. I think it would be appropriate to grant the variance to have you build it. The front walk that looks like a landing field. What do you envision going there? 3 foot wide, 2 foot wide, steps, what?
Yeah, I didn't want to, the gentleman who did the rendering for us was charging us every CAD and edit. And I was like, you know what, the walkway is not part of the project that we have currently. It's currently single flagstone steps. That's something that we will visit once this project is fully done. I am somebody who is for minimal permeable surfaces and increased landscaping. So we want something that's going to blend with the yard. We kind of like the cottage feel. We hope to increase beds, landscape beds all around it.
As
gradually,
opposed
of
to a
course.
front yard patio.
Oh, yeah, no, that will not happen.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any others? Tammy, nobody raising their hands?
So the same steps before, if you're via Zoom, just use the raise your hand feature if you wish to speak about this item, either for or against. If you've dialed in, it's *9 to raise your hand and then *6 to unmute.
I'm sorry, were there letters for and against, or I missed that? I'm sorry. No.
And we have no raised hands.
We've
And no
spoken-
letters.
Yeah, no letters,
letters,
no
huh?
objections. We've spoken to all
Oh.
of our neighbors. They're very familiar with the project we have planned, and they're all looking forward to seeing what it comes out looking like, and excited for the improvement to the neighborhood.
Okay,
I have one question. I'm looking at the survey a little bit. The driveway is like totally in the back. So your front porch, is that like where you get packages? People drop them off there?
Yeah, we get our packages to the front porch. Sometimes people, the post office lady sometimes drives up the driveway if she has a package. But no, we receive packages to the front door.
Okay.
It is very confusing.
okay. Well, hearing no other questions, we will close this item and move on to the discussion and voting stage of the meeting. As we have previously done and will continue to do, we'll do this in reverse. So the first item up for discussion and vote is 24-0116-03. Comments?
None by me.
Could you repeat the
Suggested
address for
the
that,
staff
Lee?
is
You didn't mention the address for the application. What's the address for that one?
It is 8 Acorn Lane.
Do you have more than 5 people?
You mean
Yeah,
board
you make
members?
6.
Yeah, sitting. We gotta, if there are, we've got to designate the 5 that are hearing.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Did we say who was sitting for each one? I guess not.
No, we actually didn't do that. I apologize for my error.
Well, I'm not being accusatory. I'm just keeping you out of hot water.
No, you are. Who would like to sit this one out?
I'll sit it out.
Okay, Andy. Would somebody like to make a motion on this? I don't see that there's going to be much discussion involved.
I'll make a motion to approve as recommended.
I'll second.
mean, recommended by zoning to condition it that they cannot enclose the front porch.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay, so we've got Steve making the motion, Danielle seconding. All in favor of this application, please signify by raising your hand and saying aye.
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 Aye. Approval is unanimous. The next item up for discussion is item 24-0118-02 for Hillside Street. And Tom, why don't you sit this one out?
Okay.
Okay. Discussion? Well, I'll make a motion.
I think the issues that were raised just need to be
Yeah.
enumerated as part of the motion.
Yes, that, I think it's important that we reduce the width of the curb cut opening to the minimum required by the city of Norwalk, that a landscaping plan be submitted to staff for their approval, since it's indicated that on the drainage plan, at least, that the one tree is to be removed. I'd like to see more landscaping. And I think that an inspection needs to be done of the basement apartment to ensure that it provides the required second means of egress, and that a floor plan of that apartment, if it's not already on file in the building department, and it doesn't sound like it is, be submitted to the building department for review and permit issuance.
I agree.
Okay,
Sounds good to me.
okay, so Ben, you second it?
Sure, I'll second.
Okay, so I've made the motion, Ben has seconded it. All those in favor, as we've stated, please raise your hand. Say yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we have unanimous approval of that item. Next item up is, well, we've skipped item C, which will remain open, and item B was withdrawn and will be heard next month as well. So we go back to item 23-1116-01, 11 Boughton Street. Who'd like to sit this one out?
I'd like to stay in, thanks.
You want to stay in?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can sit this one out if you need a
Okay,
volunteer.
Danielle, you're off the hook on this. Discussion on this item. I think we had some issues, and the first thing I'll say is they need to create, as required, a recreational area on the site, preferably in the rear, and the applicant also needs to present a landscape plan to the staff for their approval.
Why don't we have the staff, why don't we have the staff also look at the recreation area plan? Because I think we were
Yes, well, that
talking at
would
one
be
point,
included.
grass alone is not enough.
No, it's got to have some elements. While we're not looking for swing sets and slides, it needs to fit the definition of a recreational area.
So Andy, you want to stay in this one, or you want me to stand out? You have comments on it? I don't want to interrupt your comments, Andy.
Well, I think Danielle was sitting out, wasn't she?
Yeah,
She
Danielle.
was- I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry, I missed
Yeah.
that. I'm sorry.
And Steve had a number of things he was inquiring about, and we should hear from Steve too.
Yeah, please go ahead, Steve.
No, well, I'm happy that the place is being improved. I'm looking forward to the changes. I welcome staff's recommendations. This is a property that you can see a lot of that area on Cliff and Boughton. So I'm just looking forward to the new owner and, you know, doing some great work in that corridor.
Terrific.
Can we, or should we also recommend that the phone and internet jumble be cleaned up?
I don't think we can do that, only because I think we can inquire on it, but I don't think we could recommend it being a cleanup on that.
Well, could we recommend that the owner work
I think,
towards
I
that
think-
end?
I think the owner wants it, right? I mean, he sees it's a blight. I mean, I'm not a blight officer. There is no blight officer, but it's certainly an eyesore, at least.
Yeah,
I would say maybe discontinue lines that are not currently in use, maybe.
Could be. Yeah, companies are quick to install and not so quick to take out.
It's technically utility property, right?
I say that because we have different owners of that. The landlord doesn't really open up that account. Normally it's tenant driven, but I will leave it up to, you all to decide, but I think maybe taking out the lines that are not being used, because you're looking at 8 different companies that provide service in that corridor. You got Dish Networks, you got Optimum, you got Frontier,
Steve,
Fiber.
Steve, somebody has to make an effort.
I know that, but I would say, I'm okay. I'm more into like the water drainage on that driveway more than the wires going around, because there's gonna be more wires next month, and what are you gonna do?
Well, the thing about that area is that there's water problems anywhere in the lower area there. And we can't stop that. We didn't need a major project in the city to do that. We can clean up the wires, and maybe we'll ever make a recommendation that they be done, since the new property owner is wanting to do it. Yeah.
Well, I think we can make the recommendation that the owner work towards cleaning up the jumble of wires.
Just dress them. Just dress them. Put some trunks in there over them. I mean, as I say, one provider comes and goes. They just, so as the owner, you got a sense of pride. You want some sort of appeal. So I think you can make the request, and they'll tell you if they're going to do it or not do it.
Yeah.
And with what Steve said about the drainage, I think that part and parcel of paving the parking area, some drainage layout, the water's got to be pitched somewhere. I think that needs to be addressed. Creating a depression in a parking area and allowing everything to drain into it is not the solution. So
It won't drain. It won't drain, not down there.
No, it won't.
But the thing is, it seems to me that the city has a responsibility to make sure the streets drain. And my last view of the place was they're not draining in a heavy storm. Water builds up down there.
Well, then it might be determined by whoever does the site work that a depression is created and water is retained on site. That's
good.
We saw in the previous application for Hillside that they are installing subsurface drainage collection and eventually piping that into the town storm sewer system, that's the solution there. I don't know if it's possible. I don't know what the sewer inverts are or the capability of the storm sewer, but we might recommend that be investigated.
Land use committee of the city, at least 10 years ago, was trying to remedy. Ryan McMahon High School is right above Bowden, and there's a steep cliff face. Coming out of that cliff face and heavy storms are creeks. They pour down the front of it. And so land use tried to get that under control, but it gives you an idea that there's a lot of drainage down through the land and heavy storms.
I'm very aware of those type of problems where large changes in elevation exist. I had a client that was required to put in stormwater retention in his backyard for just the driveway and roof leaders. It ended up blowing out and ending up in a parking lot 40 feet down. So I understand the problem, but I think it should be investigated.
The only reason that I wouldn't recommend permeable is because I think the water doesn't just come from uphill. I think it comes from downhill and builds up. And so permeable won't work, not in that kind of condition.
No, it won't. And it may even percolate up.
Yeah, it might, unfortunately.
So with that being said, I know there's 9 units there. There's use there. I think drainage is a comment to make about it. am familiar with the drainage though in that corner. The owner hasn't been there long enough to identify the potential seasonal changes on that part of the street. Staff, how will we word this to address this drainage concern?
Could say that it's required that DPW review the impervious surface plan. They may look at it anyway, oftentimes as part of, for any variance that we may grant, a subsequent zoning approval or zoning permit is required, and then a building permit is required. It's the building department's responsibility to get all the other approvals. We often include on our zoning permits that DPW review is required.
Understood.
I think that could be a sufficient answer for us.
Yeah, great.
Well, I think it's going to be important that the applicant submit to the building department floor plans of the 4-unit building for a building permit, that the permit be taken out and the building inspected.
Yeah. Is that your motion?
I
Lengthy
hadn't
one.
planned on making the motion this time, but I will. I'd like to make a motion
If that's it, I'll second it.
well, I want to make sure we have certain things in this approval motion.
Yeah.
That the site plan be amended to include a recreation area,
Mhm.
that
The input from DPW.
input from DPW, that floor plans be submitted to the building department for their review and approval. Landscaping plan be submitted. Was there anything else we required?
Not that I recollect.
I think that was it. So that is in its entirety my motion.
And all. All in
Did you-
favor?
Did you
I'll
second,
second
Andy?
that motion.
Who seconded?
I will second that
Thank you.
Yeah.
motion. I'll
Okay,
second
Either
that
way,
motion.
I seconded it
Okay.
already, but go ahead.
Oh,
Let Tom do it.
and who is sitting
Tom
this
do it.
one out? Oh, Danielle is sitting it out. Okay.
Yes.
All in favor of approving this application as amended, raise your hand and say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Motion is approved.
Thank you,
Super.
everyone, for your time, attention, and thoughtful commentary. We'll address the issues as we move forward through the process.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
all
Ms.
very
Suchi.
much.
Thank you. Okay. Let's move on to the meeting minutes from December. Everyone had a chance to read through them?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, getting back to something. I've gone through the minutes. My name was spelled incorrectly 14 times. As well as being misspelled on the public notice. So if Tammy would make note of that, I would appreciate it.
That was
I
an Easter egg
apologize,
for you,
Lee.
You'll be exonerated in any lawsuit.
just to make sure you were
Oh,
reading the
that
minutes.
wasn't me. Did anybody have any issues with the minutes besides me?
No.
I had no comments.
Nope.
Okay. All those that attended the meeting and want to approve the minutes as modified here, please raise your hand, signify by saying aye.
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 Okay.
Rating?
Just as a a matter of notice, I will not be in attendance at the February meeting. I will be attending a conference that week in Asheville, North Carolina. So
Let me ask
Danielle,
you a
you will get the
question.
pleasure.
I have an admin issue.
All right.
Tammy, on your note, training, board members serving as of January 1, 2023 must complete initial land use training by January 1st of 2024, which is rear view mirror time for us because that's already come by. Do we have anybody who didn't make it?
I'm happy to report all members are compliant.
I'll be.
Right.
Good.
Also, a quick
Good.
thing too, I wasn't going to make the meeting today. I just had hip replacement surgery last month, but I will be at the meeting next month. So I'm recovering
Good.
okay. It's been 3 weeks,
Oh.
so I was able to make this meeting on time. But next month I should be good. If I'm good now, I should be better next month. So
Oh,
I'm
good.
glad you're good. Good.
Glad it's gone well.
yes.
Anybody have anything else?
I move to adjourn.
I second. All in favor?
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you,
Hey, y'all.
everyone.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Take care.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Thank you,
Aye.
and we'll see you in March.
Bye-bye.